Kia ora, g'day, welcome back here with this video that got sent through to me. I see Tim Kennedy, it looks like he has started his own podcast, Brian Callen, who is a friend of Tim Kennedy's. I watched the first little bit and then I decided to skip forward to this timeline where it's got Brian Callen addresses the controversy. So I think this is the part where it may delve into asking Tim Kennedy some questions, and or Tim Kennedy is going to, I guess, maybe tell the truth now about some stuff that he perhaps hasn't been so honest about in other interviews and things that he's spoken of and things to do with his military service. So anyway, let's jump into this one.
Yeah, man. It's and I wanted to do this because I think that I'm the first guy in this thing. Good. And you know, you and I have been friends for 12 years now. And so I know a different Tim. And so I think it's important to address the elephant in the room. You think?
Yeah.
Right. By the way, there are already comments right now.
Yeah.
You can just read the comments. Yeah, you know, right.
Stolen valor.
Yeah, all that stuff.
You've never been deployed.
Yeah, and so one of the things I want to be very careful too with addressing it, because I don't want to get bodied by. I'm not a journalist. I didn't do any. The most I've come close to is go and do stand up in Afghanistan in 2007. That's as close to a war zone in Afghanistan. And but you know, there's one of the things I want to sort of like, you know, I think that when all the stuff went down about you, about the book, about the V for, you know, valor, when that happens to a friend of yours, you go, well, where do I put all this stuff? I don't know enough. I read the book, loved it. I don't know what's true and what's not, because I don't know anything about combat.
Well, that's crazy. Yeah. So when this guy, I assume his name is Brian Callen, is saying that he read the book and that he loved it, I assume he's talking about Tim Kennedy's Scars and Stripes, which I think the Antihero podcast went down a rabbit hole on that one. And that was a stolen title from another American soldier. I don't know much about that person, so I don't know if that person is a hero or what. But apparently the title of the book was stolen, and a whole bunch of information within Tim Kennedy's book, apparently, I've never read it, is apparently not true or not made up. So to see that this guy, what is he, a comedian or something? I'd have to have a look. I haven't done any research to see who Brian Callen is, but he said he did some comedy in Afghan in 2007 for the troops, so maybe that's what his role is. He's a friend of Tim Kennedy's for more than 12 years, and obviously still a friend of Tim Kennedy's, even in spite of whatever has happened with regards to what Tim Kennedy has either said or not said. So let's carry on.
I know certain tier one guys were like, hey, this doesn't make sense. I saw some of that. So I want to be very careful and respectful of anybody, not just people who fought, but people.
I wonder if he'll talk about running around with the bag of grenades and lobbing those into places.
Who spent a lot of time in theater away from their loved ones, paid a price for that. One of the things I saw when I was only in there for 10 days, but the amount of time people had spent away from their family. So it's a very sensitive topic when somebody might have inflated what they did or whatever it might be, or there's accusations. This gets real dicey. So I think it's really important to treat it with kid gloves, and more important than me for me to be very respectful. But one of the reasons I wanted to do this with you, and one of the reasons that you are my friend, and I'm proud to call you my friend, regardless of what people say. And I never wavered from that. And either did the people closest to you who really know you. And one of the reasons for
I got to say, that's pretty cool. Like the stuff that Tim Kennedy might have said or done or might have inflated about his service and that sort of thing, and missions and jobs, that's not cool. But the fact that this guy and whoever else, these other real friends of Tim Kennedy's, that must mean a lot to him. I have no doubt. So this guy's not a military guy; he's a civilian, as he's said. But that would mean, well, it would mean a lot to anybody. So no doubt it means a lot to Tim Kennedy as well. But yeah, I think that's worth acknowledging. That's cool. Like sometimes you get people that are your friends when things are good and when you're popular, or when you've got a Victoria Cross, and then all of a sudden when bloody rubbish starts to come out and accusations and allegations, then those supposed friends start running for the hills.
That is a couple of things. One is I just know I've seen who you were when you were at the top of your game in the top of the world where everybody loved Tim, where Tim was making all the money, where Tim was the center of attention, where Tim was the American hero. I saw personally, I saw how you treated people who needed help. I know things that you don't even know that I know, but I saw stuff that you did, like getting up at 3 a.m. and driving to somebody's house who was a veteran who was suicidal. I saw that stuff. You don't know that I saw some of the stuff I know. I know a lot more than you think I know, but I saw it with my own eyes.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I know. I watch you when you sleep, bro. But I do. And I also, I saw how you treated me. I saw how you treated a lot of people, but especially veterans. I saw with I was part of you trying to get me involved in it. Times I couldn't do it, but I saw the effort that you've made over the past, I think I've known you over 12 years. And the amount of energy that you put into trying to help people who couldn't help themselves. That was what I've never forgotten. And that's when I think of you, that's who I think of. The other thing that I also know about you is that you are the closest thing to a badass as I've ever met. I mean, in terms of your ability to do violence, anybody who has a question about that is welcome to step on the mat with you. It's not a good time, but I've never seen you not smash everybody. So you're physically, you've got nobody.
And that's a cool point, eh? I mean, Tim Kennedy is definitely probably one of the few things people could not call him is a coward. Like, the guy is, I don't know about his military combat stuff, but his being in a cage and fighting and or being on the mats, like the guy will tune people up. And he's been in there against some of the best, Arguably, he beat Yoel Romero, who delayed and then got the lucky strike, which put Tim Kennedy out. He's fought against Hodger Gracie when he was coming in, survived against Hodger on the ground, held his own. I don't know if Tim Kennedy won that fight by decision or not. I can't remember, but he's been in there with all sorts of people. And, there's, again, like what his mate here is saying, it would be interesting for anybody to challenge Tim Kennedy by calling him a coward and then getting in amongst it and having a scrap with the dude. It's probably not going to go very well for them or as well as what they might think.
He's going to deny that. I was a fan of your MMA. But the other thing that when all these things started coming into question, I kept saying to you, Tim, but don't they know that you're always overseas? Because again, let me just say this. I saw, and I know I'm not, you told me I'm not allowed to say much, so I'm going to be very general here, but I saw with my own eyes over the years, you packing your bags, dude, and putting things like body armor and weird in your bags and then disappearing and going to places that I probably can't say, but I know you were like, I was like, you're where? I remember FaceTiming you and I was like, where are you? Are you in Texas? And you go, it would take you 60 hours to get where I'm at because
that part in and of itself, where obviously him and Tim have had a chat and he's told him that he can't be very specific and all that sort of stuff, that will probably throw more questions in and around the interwebs about what is he telling his mates. And there's been there's been the movie True Lies, Arnold Schwarzenegger and I think whoever the lady is, can't remember, apologies to her, I think she's a big name in the acting space, and then some guy who pretends to be a spy or whatever, but it's actually Arnold Schwarzenegger who's the real spy or whatever the bloody case might be. But anyway, like that, where am I going with that? This guy talking and the stuff that he's just saying here is probably going to throw more questions in and around and probably maybe more controversy to and for Tim Kennedy. What are you telling your mates? Where are you telling them that you are, that it's going to take 60 hours for the person to get to where you are? Like, where are you? What sort of stories are you telling your friends or whatever?
Vegetation was so different. And I, by accident, saw some stuff and I was like,
that's some pretty poor OPSEC on my part.
Well,
you're going to get me fired.
I know. Well, no, I just saw the vegetation, but you've always been very general. But the reason I actually know a lot more than you think I know is because I'm also friends
with my boss.
I'm friends with a lot of guys that you know spend a lot of time with. And so now, okay, so there were those things that I saw that I know a lot of stuff. We'll get into the book. We'll get into.
Okay, well, I thought it was going to be getting into it sooner rather than later, but this must be the build up to it. I should have looked at the other timestamps. So it's this Tim responds to questions. Maybe that's where it's going to happen, this little piece down here. But anyway, carry on.
All the questions that people have. Again, I want to be very respectful, and I'm not a journalist, and I want to treat this with kid gloves. But those were the two things that, for me, I kind of, that anchored me.
Yeah.
And that's why you're my friend. That's why you'll always be my friend. I just know the real guy. You know, I'm not. That's just the way I am, bro. I'm a diehard. I'm a rider. I just am. It's the way I was raised. Maybe it's the Sicilian in me. Yeah. You know, I don't care. I just the way I am. You're my friend. Proud to call you my friend. So I wonder if the next thing we should do is address the points of contention.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that you were accused of is saying that you said.
This should be good. Now we're getting into it. So Brian Callen addresses the controversy. Maybe I should have started at that point first.
You'd been overseas countless times in a combat capacity.
Yep.
And that was called into question because they looked at your Green Beret record.
My DD-214.
Okay, whatever that is. Again, guys,
2010.
Again, I don't know anything about this military stuff. Yep. I'm not going to take on what a tier 1 operator is saying or not saying. I don't want any trouble with Delta Force or any of that stuff. So I'm trying to be as respectful as I can. But the fact of the matter is, you were deployed overseas with various entities.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, I think I'll
just tell the truth, I think, is what they're after, is the question. Like, how many times did you deploy and in what capacity? Like, if you deployed once, it's awesome. If you deployed twice, 10 times, whatever the case might be, like, just, I think that's the part that was probably contentious. Not that I've read the book, but bits and pieces that I've seen and that I've heard is where people have questioned Tim Kennedy's operational combat deployment history.
I'll take intentionally trying not to be vague and ambiguous, but when I said I'd had dozens of deployments, that is absolutely totally 100% truthful. And then you look at DD-214, you're like, dude, this guy's only been to Afghanistan and Iraq with the military. But then, you know,
that doesn't sound like dozens of deployments, unless he's talking about going in and out on jobs day in, day out, or week in, week out, depending on how long the deployment was. So if he's been to Iraq and Afghanistan, if that's a 12-month plus deployment, whatever, going in and out, maybe that's what he's referring to. We'll see.
If I'm going with another organization and I'm deployed for 2 months into combat, okay, should I call it a trip? So am I conflating what was trips for nonprofits, for contracting, for other types of work? Yeah. So is that my fault? Should I have been way more clear? But I didn't. I was intentionally unclear, and you know, for now 13.
I don't know. This sounds like more. It sounds like more excuses, bruz. What did he say? It said on his form that he's deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. So you've deployed twice. Nothing wrong with that, bro. Like that's awesome. Most soldiers that I know of, well, actually, I would like to think all soldiers that I know of, none of us include time that we did in the private sector as deployments, even though we may have gone to in and out of other countries or high risk environments, looking after clients in a contracting private sector perspective or manner. Let me just go back and listen to this part again.
Into combat. Okay, should I call it a trip? You know, dude, this guy's only been to Afghanistan and Iraq with the military. But then, you know, if I'm going with another organization and I'm deployed for 2 months into combat, okay, should I call it a trip? So am I conflating what was trips for nonprofits?
You just don't even include them. You just don't even talk about it. Like in terms of, I mean, you can talk about it, but you don't talk about it in the sense of it being a combat operation. Like, I spent Lincoln nearly 4 years post my time in the regiment, going in and out, predominantly out of the Middle East, in and out of Baghdad predominantly. I don't know how many trips I would have done there, but I don't, and that's still a combat war zone at that time, and going in and out of Baghdad, IEDs cooking off in and around the place, taking your television media to meetings with some suspect characters and getting them to and from places, taking them to military so that they can go out on in-beds with US military on other jobs that they were doing. Like that just doesn't factor into my head or the guys that I worked with and served with over there in that capacity, to be counting that as multiple combat deployments to Iraq. It's not a military context. Yeah, it's a combat zone. I guess I could sort of understand where Tim Kennedy's coming from if he's counting those things for not-for-profits and NGOs and private sector and contracting and all sorts of other stuff. But no, I think to me, it's not like your military. For me, my military deployment stuff has only been East Timor with 4RAR and Iraq with SASR. 2 military deployments. That's it. Jobs and stuff within those and all that sort of stuff, but just 2 deployments. I don't count all the other stuff I've done outside of that in the private sector as combat deployments. You're tooled up and you prepare for, and you're with great members of your team who are prepared for, just in case we do have to go loud. But it's not I don't know if I'm making sense, but it seems like he's used a whole bunch of other probably legitimate, genuine stuff that he's done, contracting work by the sounds of things, and just bundled that up and spoke about it in terms of he's done dozens of combat tours and deployments, but it's made it sound like he's done that with the military when it's been 2 operational deployments from what I've heard in his record.
For contracting for other types of work. Yeah. So is that my fault? Should I have been way more clear? But I was intentionally unclear. And, for now.
Why? I don't know why you're intentionally unclear. Like I just shared and said, like using myself as an example, 2 operational deployments, and then a whole bunch of, over several years of, deploying in and out of non-holiday destinations, for want of a better term.
13, 12 years. That has been, besides fighting, my other main occupation is working overseas. And that has taken lots of different forms and fashions. And
I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think that's how he's delivered that, or how he's communicated that, should have been clearer to avoid the people coming for his, whatever the record is, which shows his military deployments, and just, not putting himself in that situation in the first place. Yeah. Imagine if I did that. I've done dozens of combat deployments overseas. And then people go, hang on, let's check his record. And go, bro, it just says Timor and Iraq. It's like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? So I think, I don't know. Hey, there must just be something that goes on in people's minds when they reach a certain position or place within the military where, I don't know, maybe they just want people to look at them and admire them in a way that just go, oh, wow, you're so awesome. Like, I'll be honest, I already admired and respected Tim Kennedy just on the fact that this was before I knew he was a Green Beret. Like, I'd heard that he was a soldier in the US military. Didn't know he was a Green Beret, or Green Beret or Ranger, or one of those things. He was in the SF part of the US military, and he was an MMA fighter. I thought, man, that's trucking awesome. So I already instantly had respect for him because he was a military person who was also fighting in MMA and in the UFC of all places, like at the highest level. So, he's already got credibility for Blinken for days in regards to who he is and what he's accomplished and all that sort of thing. Why you would bundle up and look to potentially what seems like fabricate a whole bunch of military combat history and not segregate that specifically and go, look, this is my military stuff. All this other stuff is in other fields and other industries, which I won't go into detail, but that's accumulated. That has been a combination of 10 plus years worth of multiple deployments in and out of those same sort of hotspots. Like that probably would have been, I think, a better way of describing it, and it would have avoided, my opinion, it would have avoided all the blinking, the peanut gallery jumping in and going, yeah, where's his military record? I want to get that, and then calling it out on social media and stuff.
For all those guys that have done combat deployments, like, cannot sing praises and praise the sacrifice for you being away from your family time and time again for this country. I was frustrated with what we were able to do and the limitations within bureaucracy and the Department of Defense, now Department of War, and then realizing that there was ways to have more impact through other mechanisms. If you're wanting to help people, or if you're wanting to get to places where DoD is not even allowed to go, there's other groups that can get there. For those that were like throwing darts around my official record, they're absolutely accurate. I have 2 combat deployments, a bunch of different JSETs. When I left active duty and went to the National Guard, every time the National Guard, a mobilization to go work on the border for Operation Lone Star, no choice. That's when they order you to go do something, you go and do it. If I'm going to go to Africa for a training exercise, or I'm going to be going to Europe for a HUMIT cross training with a partner force, going to absolutely go do it. Never missed a single trip. And I'll be raising my hand to volunteer anytime that they ask. Just got back from Belgium I'm with the Maryland National Guard still. Proud to be a Green Beret, proud to serve, proud and just absolutely humbled by the amazing guys and gals I get to work with. And that exercise was anything short but remarkable to see the level of professionalism and expertise that my unit brings. And
this is all well and good. It's nice. It's cool to hear him acknowledging. Obviously, he's still involved with the National Guard stuff. I don't know how that works in the American context, but obviously they get to travel a lot and participate in a whole bunch of things, training exercises by the sounds of things. Maybe the National Guard is caught up in this state of, emergency or crisis or whatever. Maybe they get to deploy and serve in some sort of capacity there in an active role. But I think he's answered the first part, or the first question, at least in my opinion anyway. I'm probably going to pause this one here because it's probably nearly 30 minutes and a lot of that was me sort of talking away. But I think there's more to this, so I'll come back to this and do another reaction on it another time. But I'm interested to see how much transparency and truth he's going to tell. So we've got one so far, which is he's got 2 combat deployments with his time in the military. And then, talking about the National Guard stuff, is that like a reservist? Is that like territorial force, reserve force that the US military has? Or is the National Guard like a regular force job where you're in it day in, day out? It doesn't sound like it to me. It sounds like what we might call reserves, or TF here in Australia or in New Zealand. Territorial force, like part-time soldiers. So they've got daytime jobs and then part-time, so many days a month, or so many days a month or whatever. They've got to parade and show up, and they have an opportunity to do some training and stuff from a military context or perspective as a side project or part-time job, essentially, because I do believe they get paid for that role as well. So anyway, we'll leave this one here. We'll park it up. I'll come back to it another day, and we'll see what else we hear from Mr. Tim Kennedy. So until then, thanks very much for your time and support once again, as always. And excuse me, and we'll see you on the next one.